Hi, my name is Ben, the Coin Geek, and I own Old Pueblo Coin in Tucson, Arizona. And if you're watching this in the year 2021 and you want to know what happened historically to something that used to be called currency or paper money, well, sit down and let me tell you a story. So, currently, it's the year 2020. And as I record this, America is in the middle of a pandemic, which is to say there's a virus uh, going out around us, which has everybody scared to death. People are hoarding food, people are hoarding toilet paper, and generally, it's a strange time because in our lifetime, my lifetime, I've never seen anything like it. So, uh, history will show you and tell you that during times like these, you're going to see governments and men change things and do things differently. Some for good, and some maybe not so for good. But one of the things that you'll see that will come from this is destruction of what is known as paper currency. So, as in the early 1600s, the Chinese decided, you know what, we don't have to actually have on hand all this cash coin. We can produce a piece of paper that represents the cash coin that we have, and we can transact it that way. And that is the beginning known to man of what is called paper money. And so, throughout time, paper money has been used to represent a value of currency. Now, at certain times, it was specifically tied to a specific amount of gold that somebody had or silver that somebody had that a government had. And then later in time, it became just really tied to the idea of the labor, the sweat, the equity, the value of an entire country. So the US dollar was based on really, in my lifetime, not on gold or silver, but just on the belief system that this is backed by the good faith of the American people. In other words, the value of all of our industry, the value of all of our houses, and all of these things. So, one of the number one ways, coming back to 2020, that a pandemic can spread is through germs, of course. And one of the number one ways that germs are spread is through paper currency. So, there are companies that are currently going completely away from cash and saying we will only take what at the time are called debit cards. Or credit cards. In other words, it is simply an electronic device that will capture the amount of currency that you have. And so when I was young, people didn't use these things. People only used money. They used coins and they used paper currency. And then over time, that started to transition. And at this time, we had all kinds of competing different ideas of what electronic currency should be or should look like. So along came some things called cryptocurrencies, which were not backed by anything. They were just an electronic digit that people traded through their electronic devices. And I think in general, the federal governments of the world didn't really like this. And because it was competition for whatever their US currency, whatever the currency of the other countries were using. But a weird thing happened sometime when I was in my 40s and I started to look around, and suddenly I had something for sale, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, do you take Apple Pay?" Apple Pay? What's Apple Pay? And so, of course, at this time, there's a company called Apple that produced electronic devices such as phones and smart gadgets. And you would take those, and they had their own payment system. Now, you didn't actually take any paper money and give it to them, it was simply on there. I said, "I don't know what Apple Pay is." And he said, "Here, watch." And he took his phone and he texted me $100. Well, then in my phone, it said I had $100. And what does it matter if my phone says I have $100 as long as someone else will take it? It doesn't matter that it's actually a piece of paper money or that it's actually backed by anything, because all that it takes to have a currency is faith. That's all that it takes, is to have people believe that it's worth something. And so at this point, my belief is that you're not going to see paper currency 10 years from today, that everything is going to be electronic. Now, for a ton of people, this is great news because you know what? They can transact anywhere in the world. So if you're in a country that is barren and destitute, and there is no economic anything, I mean, you have no upward mobility, you actually now have the ability to receive money that other people believe in because your local currency is worthless, and you have the ability to pull yourself out of poverty. Now, in America, we see things a little different. We see our freedoms eroding. We see the ability to have money as freedom. It's kind of like my grandma used to say before we took her car keys away that that was her freedom, you know. And so what at the time of this recording, people actually had to drive their cars manually. But I'm sure by now you're thinking, man, that is so weird. Why would you ever do that? That's so dangerous. So, but the reality is that people have already given all their freedom away to private corporations and companies because they give them all of their information and data to track on electronic devices. The exact same thing will happen with a federal currency or a universal currency that is electronic, and that is to say, whoever has the power will be able to track every last transaction that everyone does, and they will be able to control the people through that. Now, my hope is that basically at this point, Visa and MasterCard and all those processing companies just go away, and you have some type of federal universal transaction tax, which is to say, currently, if you transact something with a debit card or a credit card, uh, the vendor gets charged a percentage, 2 or 3%. So if you think about that, these people simply for making an electronic transfer go through are getting a cut of every transaction, billions of transactions a day. And it's almost like in a way free money. Now I know they have costs and overhead. I'm not, I'm not stupid, but the point is that um, that if the federal government wants to do that, that would make a lot more sense than just having taxation based on income. Let people keep their income and just take a piece of transactions. Now I know I'm some sophomore kind of guy, and that doesn't make any sense, and everything is evil, and we're all going to be doomed. But I can have some hope, can't I? But you living in 2120, you living what is to my future, you probably already know that I'm a fool and that all these things that I've just said don't make any sense because really the government controls everything at this point, and you don't have any freedom like we did. By the way, you probably won't get to see this video because it will have been banned. So anyway, I'm Ben the Coin Geek. Thanks for watching, and at some point in time, maybe you can find a good book on currency. Thanks.